On today's Locked On Jayhawks, Kansas takes on Kansas City, UMKC, in a game on Tuesday night. We preview the action, what we're looking forward to see out of KU in this one.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can hear me as well Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. on KLWN in Lawrence with Rock Chalk Sports Talk. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcasts. You can like and subscribe to us on our YouTube page. And thank you to the everydayers out there tuning in to each and every episode. We talked about KU's bowl game. We recapped the UConn game. We're going to have plenty more content coming at you this week. On today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're talking KU against UMKC. And previewing the game for the Jayhawks, we'll get into our matchups of the game, players to watch, and more with the UMKC Scouting Report. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. Now, KU takes on UMKC at 7 o'clock Tuesday night. You can listen to the game on KLWN and 105.9 KISS with pregame starting at 5:30. And the Jayhawks come into this one looking to, just continue their winning streak. They've won 3 consecutive games, looking to win your 4th straight game here and keep up the good work heading into the Missouri game. As far as some of the top storylines in the game, this is the first of your 2 games in a row against teams from the state of Missouri. Now, UMKC, obviously, kind of right on the border there in Kansas City. But, first of 2 against Missouri in the lead up into the game against Missouri. And I think to that notion, this becomes another game similar to the Eastern Illinois game. UMKC is better than Eastern Illinois was, but about avoiding the letdown, look ahead type of performance, right? You're coming off a game over UConn that you won big. It's I don't know, everything's a positive right now. You just won a big game. All of a sudden now, okay, we just played UConn. The crowd was insane, and now you're having to play UMKC. You could have an easy letdown performance if you're looking ahead, or if you're just kind of emotionally up from the last game and now you have to come back down. Then you have the look ahead aspect of it where, hey, you're taking on Missouri next, your biggest rival coming into town on Saturday, and that environment's going to be crazy. That game's going to mean so much. This is kind of that sandwich game in between where you could easily have, again, the similarity to what happened against Eastern Illinois. Now, maybe because of what happened against Eastern Illinois, where it was kind of in that trap zone, maybe that makes it less likely to happen in this one, happening just basically a week later. So maybe that's a positive for KU here. Another try to further the bench and develop that 5 through 9 is another key storyline here. Kansas really hasn't had that opportunity in a little bit, probably since the Chaminade game, to really feel like you can go deep in the bench and you're not going to have consequences and you can have a longer leash for some of the bench guys. Ideally, that's what the Eastern Illinois game would have been. But obviously, because of score and how close that game was, you weren't allowed that opportunity. You weren't afforded that to your bench. So, you go back, and obviously UConn, that was basically a 6-man rotation, right? You're trying to win a top 5 game. Eastern Illinois, a lot closer than it ended up being. So you end up having to play the starters and the guys you trust much more than you ideally would have wanted to. Like Nick Timberlake doesn't play in the second half. You go back to the game 4, Tennessee, same thing. You're playing a top 10 opponent, trying to salvage going 2-1 in Maui after losing to Marquette. Game before, you're playing Marquette, top 10 opponent, and one that you were losing to, right? So then you go back to even the Chaminade game, and even in that game where you were afforded a bit of a longer leash for the bench, it was 25-20 at one point. So you weren't able to put them away to a point that you could play the bench even more minutes than you might have expected to. But obviously in that game, you still were able to do so. So this is a good opportunity to get those guys a little bit more minutes. Maybe that helps with player development. Maybe that helps you earn more trust in a player by seeing them with a larger sample size on the court specifically. And I think when you're looking at those players, it's a different conversation for each one of them, right? Really the 5 through 9. With Marco Jackson, he had a good game. He had some good moments against UConn. The stats don't jump off the page. When you're the 5th option on the floor, I don't know that the stats are really ever going to jump off the page. It's just, can you do your role, to a strong enough level? I thought he did well against UConn. I think there's still another, area you can jump to and improve there. And you're looking to see, okay, can you come off a good game and string together another good game after that? With Johnny Furphy. It's pretty clear he is the most trusted guy off the bench right now, right? Can you continue to rise up? Can you continue to show good stuff and have strong run of play and do the things, defense, hitting threes that are going to get you those minutes and maybe extended sample size in this type of game? For Jamari McDowell, right? Can you show some stuff to maybe earn some extra playing time? For Nick Timberlake, can you continue to hit shots in this game and do a better job on the defensive end of the court? That's going to feel like Bill Self maybe gives you a longer leash in the following game against Missouri with, Parker Brown. This should be a better matchup for him. So all the way across the board, it's different conversations for every player, but can you continue to establish those 5 through 9? Does anybody play well enough to make you think, okay, maybe they'll earn one extra opportunity in the following game, and with that one extra opportunity, they'll build on it and earn even more opportunities, right? Or will it just be more about gaining confidence for some of the young players and continuing to progress? There's a lot of things you can do in a game like this to gel and get those players to progress. I think the last big storyline I have here, what will we get from KU from 3? They've been very Jekyll and Hyde from the 3-point arc so far this season. It's been either Inferno, white hot from 3, like the first 2 games, and like last game, even the UConn game wasn't a big amount of attempts from 3, only 14, they hit 9 of them. So it's either been, they're shooting 45, 50, 55% from 3, or it's just been kind of non-existent. Like you can't hit the broadside of a barn. We haven't really seen a game in there where I guess maybe Marquette was like this. I think you were like 33% from 3 against Marquette, but again, that was kind of low volume too, where KU has just been like average from 3, where they've shot like 35% from 3. It's been either really highs or really lows from 3-point range. And ideally, you'd like to be a little bit more consistent there. It's nice to have the big outlier games, and you will have big outlier games, positive and negative. But instead of that being the whole way, have some more consistency all the way through to be able to rely more consistently on the 3-point shot. So I want to see Kansas have a good 3-point shooting game for a back-to-back game. We obviously saw that in the first 2 games, but ideally you'd like to see it for 3 or 4 straight games, and that would include this one kind of being along the way. Now, as far as the UMKC scouting report, they are 3-5 on the season. They're ranked in the high 200s on KenPom right now. Their wins of the 3, 2 of them are over NAIA schools in Avila and University of St. Mary. And then most recently, they got their first Division I win. That was against Southeast Missouri State. They beat them by like 30. Now that SEMO team is ranked in the bottom 10 in the entire country on KenPom. So you should beat them by a lot, but credit to them, they did. Meanwhile, their losses, they lost by 38 points to Baylor, 23 points to a really good Colorado State team, 12 points to UNC Greensboro. That's like a fringe top 100 team, 10 points to Brown, and 4 points to Middle Tennessee State. Both of those are ranked in like the 200s. This is a team that plays at a bit of a slower tempo. And as far as the roster makeup goes for UMKC, they've got good size at the guard positions, like all the way through. Like at point guard, they're mostly playing a 6'2" and 6'3" point guards for the 2 that are kind of rotating in. Outside of that, really 2 through 4, it's like wings and good size guards between 6'4" and 6'7" that play the 1 through 4. Or even the third string point guard is a bigger height there too. And the guards all do a good job of teaming up to get rebounds. This is a good rebounding team. They don't really have great size at the center position. They run 6'8" with the starter, 6'7" with the backup, and then 2 6'9" guys round out the rotation. It's mostly the 6'8" and the 6'7" guys who play, though. I will say the 6'7" guy, very good shot blocker, very good athlete in what they've done. But Jamar Brown's kind of the player to watch for them for the leading point scorer. He's a good bucket getter, 14 points per game, almost 5.5 rebounds per game, 49% from the floor, 38% from 3. Anderson Kopp is a lengthy kind of do-it-all guard. He's getting 12.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, over 3 assists per game, but he has really low shooting numbers this year. And then Cameron Foss is someone you have to mark on the outside. He's putting up 10.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, shooting 45% from 3 on 42 attempts so far this season through 8 games. Now, as far as things they do really well as a team, things they don't, things they do well, excellent rebounding team. They're like top 60 in the country at both offensive and defensive rebound rate. So not quite as good as UConn, but this is still a good challenge for you. They actually on paper have a better rebounding team than what you've been so far this season. They're really good at taking charges, and they take a lot of 3-point attempts at around an average rate of 3-point shooting. They're like slightly below average in 3-point shooting percentage, but they take a lot of them. So if you have a lot of volume, they could get hot at any moment in time. Things they don't do well, they turn it over a ton offensively. They're really poor at free throw shooting, in addition to not really getting to the free throw line very often. They don't force a ton of turnovers or get steals. They foul a lot, and they have one of the worst effective field goal percentage defenses with issues in 2-point defense and 3-point defense in the country. So certainly you would think Kansas should be able to win big, but we thought that with the Eastern Illinois game. If you don't show up, then probably going to be a closer game than you might expect. But if you do show up, you should be able to win big. All right, we're going to continue on matchups of the game, players to watch in this one. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite sporting event should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to be having. You might be heading out to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl in Arizona, and you're like, oh, I got to get tickets if I'm getting all this travel out there. Don't worry. You can get out there. I doubt it's going to be a sellout. It's been around like 20, 25,000 people there the last couple of years. Like, I don't think it's going to be a sellout. You can go pull up your Gametime app and probably get a pretty cheap ticket. And because it's being played on a baseball field, you get images of your seat views, so you'll have a better idea of what it's actually going to look like in a wonky type of environment. Snag the tickets without the stress of Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, continuing on here with our matchups of the game. Then we'll get to our players to watch here. And our player matchup, too, is part of this with Locked On Jayhawks. You can find anything you missed on any of our past shows, which you can find anywhere you get your podcasts or on our YouTube page. So our first matchup here is KU on the glass, KU rebounding the basketball. Kansas has had some, just struggles so far this season on the glass, which is odd because Hunter Dickinson is a really good rebounding center, and he has been really good at getting rebounds, and he's putting up, like 12 rebounds per game. It's pretty incredible. And Kevin McCullar has had a couple games where he's had triple doubles and had, 8, 10 rebounds, whatever it is, but you're not getting much from the rest of the guys, and you need more there. Kansas ranks just shy of 300th in the country in offensive rebounding rate. They are barely inside the top 100 in defensive rebounding rate. With the personnel you have and with what you need to be good at based on some of the other strengths and deficiencies you have, ideally, you'd like this team to be top 50, I think, in defensive rebounding rate, and you'd probably like them to be at least top 150 in offensive rebounding rate. So you're kind of off those right now. UConn, I think, beat you 10-5 in offensive rebounding last game, which, UConn is one of the best offensive and defensive rebounding teams in the country. So, that wasn't a huge discrepancy, and all things considered, with that being a strength for them. Wasn't like a, overwhelming thing, but still, you'd like to think that you should be able to go toe-to-toe in that area with anyone. UMKC is top 60 in the country in offensive rebounding rate. They are top 60 in the country in defensive rebounding rate. So on paper, they are a better rebounding team than you. So in theory, UMKC actually has the advantage here despite not having more size. And the reason is that UMKC's guards do a better job getting on the glass, and they really use fundamentals and box out well and everything. Like, even when UMKC played Baylor, think about, when I think of Baylor under Scott Drew, year in and year out, they're putting up teams that are top 5, top 10 in the country in offensive rebounding rate. And they're just typically under Scott Drew and a Baylor. They're typically, regardless of the teams, they've had great rebounding teams there at Baylor. Even in that game for UMKC, where they're playing a Big 12 level opponent, top 25 level opponent, and a team who typically makes that a strength for them, UMKC grabbed 50% of their offensive misses. So half of their offensive misses they grabbed on the glass, and they also grabbed 62% of their defensive ones. Both of those numbers were almost 12% better than the rebound rates of Baylor in that contest. So they very much did a much better job rebounding than Baylor did in that head-to-head matchup. So for Kansas, I almost expect UMKC to win the rebounding battle here. Make it as even as possible if you're Kansas here. But if you do win this rebounding matchup, I think that would go a long way in me feeling like, okay, maybe you're trending in the right direction here with some of the rebounding stuff. Number 2 here is forcing turnovers. This is just kind of a season-long tracking thing for me, to be honest. And I see too much in the same way with rebounding. Like, Kansas should be a better rebounding team than the numbers show right now. I think Kansas should be a much better team with the turnovers right now. And I think there's too much potential in KU here, but it's not happening, right? I mean, last season, Kansas ranked 65th in the country in turnover percentage defense. They were good at it, right? They had 16 games last season where they forced a turnover rate of the opposing offense of 20% or higher, including 4 games where they made the opposition turn the ball over 30% of their possessions or higher. And they had 9 times where it was 24% or higher. So about a quarter of their possessions, they were turning the ball over in 9 of the games. This year, though, Kansas ranks 285th in the country in turnover rate defense. So they're not turning teams over. And they've only hit that 20% mark, which again, they hit the 20% mark last year 16 times against Manhattan and Eastern Illinois. And they have hit the 24% mark, a mark they hit 9 times last year. They've only hit 24% once this year. In 3 of their biggest games this year, they only forced 8% turnover rate against Tennessee, a 10% turnover rate against Kentucky, and a 13% turnover rate against UConn. So you see the problem here. But now you're playing a UMKC team that ranks well into the 300s in turnover rate offensively. So they turn it over a lot. They rank in the bottom 10 in non-steal turnover percentage. So they're running into charges. They're giving away free turnovers that are not steals. And they're only average in avoiding steals. So even then, it's not like they've been great at avoiding steals. You have DeJuan Harris. You have Kevin McCullar. And I get both those players are probably having to do more offensively this year. And maybe that, lessens your impact on the defensive end. You only have so much energy to do. And, Grady Dick was pretty good at getting steals off the ball. Like Jalen Wilson was pretty good at it. But still, you should be a good team at forcing turnovers. Make it happen. Get some easy buckets for the offense in this game, too, if you do it, because that would also speed up the game. UMKC, not a very fast-running team. You'd like to play at a faster tempo. That's one way to do it, is get more steals. All right, let's get to our player matchup of the game and players to watch. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview and choose from. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have all the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I go on the LinkedIn app. I see jobs available. I have all my stuff preloaded on LinkedIn. And so I know super easy to apply if I wanted to, because you just a few clicks, you already have your resume in there and stuff. So if it's easy for applicants to apply, you're going to get more qualified applicants. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, continuing on here with our player matchup and players to watch on Locked On Jayhawks. So our player matchup here, we're going to go Cameron Foss against KJ Adams. We talked about Foss in the UMKC scouting report. He's their top shooter. He shoots 45% from 3 on a little over 5 3-point attempts per game. But he also plays the 4 for them. He's like a 6'6", 6'7" wing who can stretch out and can be a matchup problem. I'd be interested to know how KU will approach it. Are they going to cross-match and put Kevin McCullar on him so he can chase him around from 3-point range? Are they going to put KJ Adams on him and just let him chase from 3? Now, if you do put Kevin McCullar on him, the guy they run at the 3 is their leading scorer. So then are you putting KJ Adams on him? Now, KJ is very switchable, and he had an excellent game defensively against UConn. So I'll just be interested to see how they approach it. The other side of the ball, though, as much as Foss is a shooter, and that could make life tough for KJ running around and chasing him and everything, KJ should be able to feast against Foss. He is not nearly as strong or built as KJ Adams is. KJ is going to have the weight advantage inside, and he is more of that perimeter playing guard that KJ should be able to kind of play bully ball inside a little bit with him. So I do think that both players could have a nice advantage on the offensive end. As far as other players to watch, like Hunter Dickinson makes sense because UMKC doesn't have 6'8" is their tallest center. Now, their backup center, Allen Davis Mukeba, is top 25 in the country in block rate, despite only being 6'7". They rotate centers. They don't have much size. So even though he has the good block rate, I wonder if how much of those blocks are help side blocks, where he's the help side defender and he comes over and blocks someone. If he's in one-on-one, it's hard to get a block when you're on somebody's body and they're shooting a hook shot. I think Hunter Dickinson should be able to feast in this one. We've seen so many times against smaller teams, him just be able to, if you can get the ball up high to him, he's so good about keeping the ball up high and not bringing it down, and he'll just go up and get an easy layup. So, I think Hunter Dickinson should be able to feast. Kevin McCullar, Brown, who is UMKC's leading scorer, plays the three for them. He's more of a shooting guard type, but plays the three. He's a really good offensive player, so that'll be a tough matchup for Kevin. But he is their lowest rated defender by Evan Miyakawa's defensive BPR. So if he is truly their worst defender and he's guarding Kevin McCullar, who is your best perimeter scorer right now, then Kevin McCullar should be able to have a good game too for Kansas. So that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We'll be back tomorrow to recap whatever happens between Kansas and UMKC. We'll be back later in the week to preview Kansas and Missouri. Nick Schwartz will join us later in the week too. You can find our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also like and subscribe to our show on our YouTube page. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you next time with Locked On Jayhawks.